like I said, we have a lot of information to cover this morning. We're going to try to move quickly through it. There are some assumptions that we've made. Of course, the assumption is that you've hopefully gone through this process once before, have an general understanding of what the interconnection tariff is, and that you have a general understanding of our ESB 750, that's 750, and ESB 756. Those are our electric service bulletins. So we are changing our format a little bit. In the past, we've talked a lot about very specific process flow. What we're trying to do is give us all an opportunity, or all of you an opportunity to see what we see, which is the things that end up holding up your application, right? Challenges that we see, what triggers a hold. Maybe you're not sure why it's going on hold. Hopefully we can clarify some of that here to make the process smoother. We will not be going over project-specific challenges that you may have. If you have any of those, we're more than happy to speak with you about those individually offline. We are also going to be utilizing, for any questions you have, in lieu of using the chat function for questions, please use the form that will be populate. We may have already put the link out there. There's a form for you to submit questions to us. We will try to address all of them during the call. If we can't get to them, we will certainly reply to individuals, and that form will be made available to everybody when this is posted on our website. Next slide, please. So as is common with National Grid, all of our meetings start with a safety message. This morning, Bridget will be providing our safety message. Bridget?
Yes, hello. Good morning. Happy Tuesday. We're just going to have a quick and sweet safety message about how to stay safe in the fall. When you're checking around your home, clear leaves from walkways and driveways to prevent slips and falls. Check your outdoor lighting. As the days get shorter, it gets darker, and so you want to make sure everything's properly lit up so you don't fall. And have your heating system serviced before the cold sets in to make sure that everything's set to go once you turn your heat on. For any fire safety, test your smoke and carbon monoxide detectors. Keep space heaters away from flammable items, and never leave candles unattended. And as far as like traveling throughout the fall for leaf peeping or even holidays, watch out for wet leaves on the road as they can be slippery as ice. Make sure you slow down and stay alert for children playing or trick-or-treating. And make sure you dress warmly in bright colors when walking in low light so you're visible to other drivers. And that is it for the safety message. I hope you all take the necessary precautions to stay safe this fall.
Thank you, Bridget.
Of course.
So we're going to kick things off with some general communications today. So a couple of things that have recently changed that are probably some of you may be aware of, others maybe you haven't noticed, but we've had challenges with, and I say we as National Grid and all of you have had challenges with electrical inspectors signing the COC document, even though that it's a tariff required document. We've made changes internally. Hopefully you guys have noticed that if you have an inspector that refuses to sign, that's okay. You still complete that entire document like you normally would, but just accompanying that document, please submit the completed electrical inspection with it. We are working with the IARG, which is the Interconnection Implementation Review Group, to address that for our upcoming tariff changes. But for the time being, it is a tariff required document. The way we're getting around the signature is by having that completed electrical inspection uploaded with it. I'm pretty sure that we are not the only utility that's doing that. From my understanding, Eversource and Unitil are also using the same approach. But obviously you want to verify with them if that's truly the case. But I know that here, that's what we are doing. The other thing is, a couple of weeks ago, I had sent out a new requirement that will be a P stamp on all one-line documents that was going to be implemented on November 1st. We had gotten some communication back from a couple of groups, namely the IIRG as one of them, where there was some concern over the timing of the implementation. So understanding that that could cause some heartache for folks, we did change the timing of that implementation to January 1st of 2026. This move is partially in direct relation to the electrical inspectors not wanting to sign off on that COC document. But the other portion of it, which I think is just as important, is in the simplified process. Many of you remember that simplified used to actually be simple, right? It used to be 5 kW systems, and they were really easy to interconnect. And we, although our ESB 750 does not specifically state that we will offer any type of lenience for smaller systems, we were granting that leniency based on the simplicity of the project. But we have a couple of things going on. Those of you that have been involved in any of the IIRG discussions or any of those groups, you know that the system size threshold is being discussed as being changed, right, from the 15 kW on single phase to 25 kW on single phase. And although not yet implemented, we are making changes that will allow us to be in a better position for when those changes actually come through. One thing that we have been seeing, I should say, next subject, right? So site as-built variances. So one of the things that we have been noticing a trend in is the frequency of the as-built being submitted with a system that is larger than what we have previously issued conditional approval for. When that happens, we do need to revisit the infrastructure to make sure that this infrastructure is capable of supporting that additional system size. As I'm sure you're all aware, the infrastructure has been being taxed rather heavily over the past 10 years or so, due to the success of everyone that's on this call being out there and getting these customers online. We are seeing certain circuits presented with challenges. Again, you guys have all seen it, where we tell you that the project requires further review, or it requires a transformer upgrade, a system downsize. So when you have something, if you've gotten a conditional approval, your best bet is to build it to the size that we approved. And if for whatever reason you are building it larger than that, at the time that you're going to submit those completion documents, or I should say in advance of submitting those completion documents, you should be using the change review functionality of the portal so that we can get eyes on it and either reissue an adjusted conditional approval or let you know what the system challenges are in that specific area. Hopefully that makes sense. So system operation, one thing that we've been, as we're migrating, National Grid, for those of you that don't know, National Grid is migrating towards AMI metering, commonly referred to as smart metering. We are noticing an uptick in systems of what we're calling reverse meter reads. The meter is spinning in the opposite direction, but there isn't we haven't issued a conditional approval. We haven't issued PTO, right? Permission to operate, ATI, if you prefer that terminology. Please be sure to not operate the system before receiving PTO, regardless of what type of meter is in the facility located there, right? It does create billing issues that can be avoided, right? So by not turning it on. If there's a regular meter there and you have your system operating, your customer, our customer, is actually being billed. Our meter does, a standard meter that's out there does not spin backwards. It only recognizes power flow as usage. So when that system is exporting, the customer is being billed for that usage. So the only time that you should be operating that system before PTO is when you're doing testing. Testing should be limited, right, in time so that we're not billing customers or inadvertently billing customers for anything that is not actually usage. So with that said, please avoid constructing your system until you've received conditional approval. And please avoid operating your system for extended periods of time prior to PTO. A couple of end of year reminders. So we understand the implication of the individual tax credit that's due to expire on December 31st. My team has been working feverishly to make sure that all of your applications are being processed in a timely manner. In fact, less than a month ago, our application review time was about 8 business days. Our screening review time was approximately 5 business days, and our time to review COCs was hovering around 8 or 9 business days. In the past couple of weeks, we've reduced our application review lead time down to 5 days, and we're continuing to move that needle and trying to progress as quickly as possible to get the application review time down even further. Our screening time, lead time is down to something like 4 business days. And the past few weeks, we've been hovering around 1 to 2 business days for COC review. Our metering department has been setting meters in roughly 4 business days. So as you can see, we are trying to make sure that we are getting applications through our systems as quickly as possible so that we can have as many customers as possible benefit from that individual tax credit. The easiest way for you to help is by let's make sure that when you're submitting applications, that they're complete, they're accurate, so we don't have to put them on hold, right? Let's get, whatever you can do to help us keep these applications off hold is great. Every time that a application goes on hold, when it comes back to us, we have to review all of that, and it does slow the process down, right? Because we could be working on another one of your applications that was complete, and you could be getting that information back quicker, right? So that's the goal there. I would like to say, and it pains me to say it because I'm sure you guys are all thinking the same thing. What happens if we have a simplified that requires distribution system modifications? At this time, if it's identified that a project requires distribution system modifications, it's likely not going to be able to be interconnected by the end of the year because of the amount of time that it takes to get through the entire process with design, construction, app review screening, all of that. However, on simplified applications that do not require any type of distribution system modification, we should be able to get through those on time, provided those applications are received by December 1st. Now, the reason why I'm saying December 1st, we're a utility, safe, reliable power is our first and primary goal, and any type of weather-related event that happens in that time frame could delay our application processing time, and it could delay our ability to set meters. So again, we're not saying that if it comes in later than that, you don't have a chance. We just happen to know that from historically, your best chance of success is to get those documents into us by December 1st. That's it for our general communications. So we're going to move, Taylor, what is our next slide? I apologize because I didn't see who our next speaker is, but I believe it might be screening, correct?
Sure. Okay. So, hi everyone. I'm Sarah Perkins. I'm on the screening team. We're going to jump into one-line note requirements. So this is here. We just want to make sure that everyone is including this note on every line diagram. If it's not included, the case will be placed on hold. It's basically just the note that's ensuring construction abides by our ESVs, and that all the meter installations and interconnections will be done safely and to our requirements. Next slide, please. Okay, so now I'm going to get into system documentation and application checklists. So this is going to be just general guidance to help ensure applications can be submitted and reviewed as efficiently as possible, so we can hopefully get you interconnected as quickly as we can. So the forms that are listed in the first bullet are going to be what's required for every application. And of course, that's also going to include the application fee. When submitting your applications, please ensure that the portal and all forms submitted match one another, and also the proposed system configuration that's being applied for. So for example, if you're applying for MA Smart, the forms should reflect that. If you're just doing net metering, we would hope to not see something like an MA Smart meter listed on the line diagram or site plan. Existing systems will need to be shown and submitted with all forms. It should be listed in the portal as the existing system size. Additionally, any proposed storage should also be shown on all forms that are submitted and listed in the assets in the portal. If you are planning to have an EV charger or interconnect any EV related equipment, it's going to need to be connected on the DC side of the UL listed inverter. And that's going to need to be noted on the line diagram. As George noted, all projects as of January 1st will need to have PE stamps on the site plans and line diagrams. If a newly proposed system is planning to be interconnected alongside a separate existing project that is net metered, a mass ACA single parcel exception would be required. Additionally, please ensure all requirements that are listed on the updated application checklist have been met for all submitted documentation to avoid delays. And one last note on this slide is that any project that is greater than or equal to 25 kWAC will require a dedicated transformer to interconnect. Next slide, please. Okay, we also want to remind everyone that there are two authority having jurisdictions, AHJs, for all projects. So the first is the local wiring inspector, and the second would be the utility, so us. It's the local wiring inspector's responsibility to ensure everything on the other side of the meter is safe. And it's the utility's responsibility to ensure that the metering in PCC is safe, accessible, and reliable for our utility workers. So some of you might have been requested to provide an AHJ letter. So I'm just going to go over when that would actually be needed. So the first instance is going to be if there is a single service drop that feeds multiple meters on a property, and there's already at least one active or proposed DER system at that location. The second is going to be if there are multiple service drops going to a single structure, feeding one or more meters for each service drop, again, with at least one active or proposed DER system. Next slide, please. Okay, so for the service upgrade work request number, this might be required to interconnect your project. Obtaining the service upgrade work request number is the responsibility of the customer or solar installer. This might be required if either the main service panel is being upgraded, there's an increase of loads that's expected, if existing service clearances and requirements are not being met, or if the screening team has determined that a service drop conductor upgrade is needed to interconnect the system. So below you can see screenshots of the form that's used to request that work request number. So on the left, you can see residential is selected, upgrade existing service is selected, and relocate existing service is selected, with notes indicating that existing clearances are not met. The one on the right does not have the relocate existing service, but it's still noting that the upgrade to, in this example, a number 2 triplex conductor is needed for interconnection. Next slide, please. For single parcel rules, single parcel rule exception is required for any proposed system where there's already an existing system behind a separate meter on the same land parcel. So a land parcel requires a deed that's registered with the state of Massachusetts, with the parcel of land being outlined using meets and bounds. If the deed does not contain outlined meets and bounds, it does not qualify for an automatic exception of the single parcel rule, and a Mass ACA exception must be provided. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is the updated application checklist. This is just showing for the portal submission and application form. Next slide. This is a continuation for site plans. Next slide, please. Again, a continuation for site plans. Next slide, please. This is showing line diagrams. Next slide. Again, line diagrams continued. And then next slide. And this is the final image of the checklist. It's just showing batteries and any additional documentation. So next slide, please. So here's some commonly missed items which could lead to application and screening review holds. The first one is going to be document discrepancies. So if there's any discrepancies between the application, the site plan, line diagram, and or what's listed in the portal, if there's an incorrect or invalid billing account number, if a service work request number is required but has not been provided or is missing, if there's a curtailment or derating letter, the letter not having the manufacturer's letterhead. For line diagrams specifically, we'll need to see inverter and other equipment, nameplates, ratings, settings, makes, models, all that. Again, we'll need to have the electrical engineering PE stamp. It will need to show a missing, or if there's a missing open blade style AC disconnect for AC coupled batteries. If the service equipment ratings are not shown, and if the note for EV chargers are missing from the line diagram. For site plans specifically, if the point of common coupling is missing, if the company pole nearest to the proposed PCC is missing, and if the entire parcel boundary is not shown or is not drawn to scale. For both the site plan and line diagram, if the equipment between the two does not match one another, so that's going to include disconnects, inverters, combiner panels, so all the equipment needs to match between the two forms. If an existing system or existing service equipment is not shown, if new and existing equipment is not noted or labeled, if the system configuration does not match what is listed in the curtailment letter, if the system disconnect is not grouped and co-located with the utility meter, if it's missing the aggregate system size labels, and if it's not noting how the system is being curtailed or derated. So that was it for that section. I'm going to pass it off to JJ, who's going to cover system installation and metering requirements.
Thank you, Sarah. Good morning, everyone. Like George had mentioned at the beginning of the presentation here, we're covering things that are going to help prevent holds and prevent any issues or surprises as you move forward with the interconnection process. And I'm going to be covering some of the system installation reminders to ensure that you have an expedient process. Next slide, please, Taylor. All projects should be ensuring that they meet all NEC and ESP 750 and 756. Our ESP 750 is our general construction blue book that covers all different standards, different heights, clearances. And our 756 is our parallel interconnection standard book. Both links for those will be at the end of the presentation. Please note if there are any service upgrades, the service must come up to the most recent NEC and ESP standards. For any projects that are swapping out old inverters or panels, you must reapply and submit for an amended ISA or for a new ISA, depending on what you're swapping out. That way the company can ensure that we have the correct record of that interconnecting facility. Any new systems have to relocate meters outside unless they get a special exception from our metering department. Meters need to be 24/7 accessible and lockable by the utility. This also includes any required disconnects. Meter sockets and disconnects must meet necessary clearances per the ESB. They can't be on top of a gas valve. They can't be like on a water main. National Grid, our metering department needs to be able to safely remove, test, and install meters. In certain areas, we have 120, 208 volt single phase systems. They're typically in the North Shore, like Lynn, Malden, Melrose, and Medford. If you're in those areas, you could please measure the voltage. Because once we get to screening and we realize that you have a single phase 208 volt versus a single phase 240 volt system, it definitely makes a difference with what we can allow for distances and allowable system sizes. All proper labeling needs to be on all parts of all the DER systems as required. Any installations that don't abide by our standards are going to be placed on hold. And any new metering will not be installed if the proper closeout documents are not provided. Next slide, please, Taylor. Here are some common definitions and terms, industry terms, including point of interconnection, where the electrical systems arrives, the PCC, which is the demarcation point between the company and customer equipment, ESS, which is energy storage system or batteries, as most of us know them as, BTM, which is behind the meter, and then standalone system, And you can read through those in detail, for additional guidance. Next slide, please. The next following slides are gonna cover installations and existing systems that we will not approve and will not replace meters in, like these shown right now for rusted and corroded meter sockets. They're just a very unsafe situation for our metering department where they had to remove this and hope that the internals don't fall apart. It could cause an arc flash or something. So if you see these services before interconnecting a system or installing a new system, please note we will have you upgrade these. Next slide, please. This also goes for antiquated or ranged meter sockets. Those are no longer allowed, and they've been out of the ESP for a long time. Next slide, please. National Grid is not accepting any meter adapters at this time in National Grid owned equipment. You can install meter adapters in a customer-owned meter for customer monitoring purposes, but we do not allow meter adapters in National Grid equipment. Next slide, please. Per the ESB, no taps or splices can be made in any of our meter sockets. A meter socket is just a house of meter with line and load. There should be nothing else in a meter socket. For the 1 volt service areas that we talked about in Medford, Malden, Glen, those services require a fifth terminal for the single phase 208 volt services. You need the fifth terminal to be able to proceed in those meter sockets. Next slide, please. The next few slides are actually correct system installations of how things should look. First one shows like the meter between 3 and 6 feet. And to the right of that, the disconnect, and everything is accessible and lockable and safe to work on. Next slide, please. Another clean installation of a single family home with a single meter with the properly labeled, net meter and the warning of the dual power supply labeling that's required there. Next slide, please. This is the proper installation of a duplex where you have 2 meters on a home. As you can see, the bottom meter shows that it has a dual supply. It's got the system disconnect located and labeled directly to the right of it. And it ensures the safety of our meter workers. Next slide, please. This is a very clean install for a multifamily where it shows the house meter where it's labeled with the dual source, with all the proper clearances and requirements. And it goes, shows like a good multimeter setup. Next slide, please. This is the proper installation of batteries. So most towns now require batteries to either be located outside or in a garage. Due to the heat that they produce, they have to be installed in non-combustible materials. So typically a garage is concrete or brick or something, which is what the Tesla system on the left. And on the right, you have properly fire rated drywall inside for at least like an end phase system. But batteries need a lot of room to breathe. They create a lot, and those are 2 great stations. Next slide, please. This is a properly installed 5th meter terminal for those 120, 208 volt single phase services. And to the right is the diagram that we have in our ESP outlining how that should look and how it should be installed. Next slide, please. For system installation, clearance requirements, this is the chart that's out of the ESP that goes over where the service drop and the service wire need to be located above certain grades, with a diagram on the right. The next few slides, the next slide has a little bit more of a clear depiction with numbers corresponding with all the requirements. As you can see, where you have the numbering that matches the numbering on the actual clearances. It's a little bit of a diagram to show you what that looks like at home. And then the last slide is all the specific service and metering installation requirements, and the specific sections pertaining to most electrical systems. I'm now going to pass this off to Mr. Fitzgerald for the simplified review process.
Thank you, JJ. Good morning, everyone. My name is Brian Fitzgerald. And next, we will review the simplified interconnection process and discuss some common hold reasons and process reminders. We will discuss the simplified path with everyone on today's call with the understanding that all attendees of the webinar understand the terms of the Massachusetts interconnection tariff. As George had mentioned earlier, if you do have project-specific questions, please reach out following today's presentation to our team for an individual conversation. As a brief reminder, simplified projects include interconnections up to 15 kW AC single phase and up to 25 kW AC three phase, assuming the project does not require distribution system modifications. All inverters must be UL 1741 SP listed. Simplified interconnections adhere to the following timelines as mentioned in the interconnection tariff. However, our team always strives to exceed tariff guidelines. For application review, we have a maximum of 10 business days. Simplified screening, 15 business days. Following the completion documents being provided by the solar contractor, National Grid then has 10 business days to complete the completion document review. Following completion package review, a meter replacement order is placed on behalf of the customer, and metering has 10 business days to complete the meter replacement before permission to operate is granted. If the customer recently had their meter exchanged with an AMI meter, immediate authority to interconnect can be granted following review of the completion package. Next slide, please, Taylor. Okay, so at the point of application review, some common hold reasons and pain points that the team has been seeing include invalid National Grid customer bill account number, missing existing system data, the power control system or PCS asset not being entered in the National Grid portal, and the limited export or derated system size not being listed and provided on the application form and line diagram. Continuing on with common app review holds, we've seen data mismatch, which can include but are not limited to account owner name, service address, National Grid bill account number, as I had previously mentioned, and utility meter number mismatch. Another common pain point is the National Grid customer bill account number being in arrears or past due. Customer's account must have a recently posted bill payment within the past 2 months or have a valid payment agreement on file. And most importantly, please ensure all hold reasons are addressed prior to resubmitting your application to limit delays for our mutual customer. Moving on to completion document hold reasons. Some pain points have been an outstanding municipal inspection for electrical work that has not been cleared previously by the local AHJ. Meter sockets cannot be used as a junction box. And existing or interconnected mass smart projects cannot be altered. After our metering crews go out to the service address, occasionally we have seen some unable to complete metering holds, otherwise known as UTC holds. Some of those reasons have included improper wiring at the meter socket, missing fifth terminals, obstructed paths leading to the customer's meter socket, vegetation growth located near the meter socket, which will prevent a National Grid technician from replacing the customer's meter, locked gates or fences, and the customer's meter socket not being labeled as solar or a dual power supply.
left a couple voicemails to the Brent line.
All right, continuing on. If a proposed system size is changed, including the system or billing owner name is changed, or an adjustment is made to which the utility meter number that the application is associated with, a simplified change review is required. During the application review portion of the interconnection process, a change review is not required. Change reviews should be entered during the simplified screening and conditional approval steps of the process. If you would like to learn more about the change review process, a member of our team recently put together a multiple page document that we can share with you after today's call. And just a few general process reminders. Your system should be installed so that it does not backfeed when the grid is down. Inverters cannot be derated for DC coupled storage interconnections that opt for the net metering program. And at application creation, the generation and AC storage size, if applicable, should be entered as nameplate rating size at that stage. That being said, thank you for your time today. As we've mentioned before, if your company would like to schedule an individual conversation, please reach out following today's call. Next, I will pass it along to Mike Armel to discuss the Simple Plus process.
Hi, I'm Mike Carmel, and I'll go over Simple Plus review process, also known as expedite. So this follows along the same way, conversely to what Brian discussed as far as simplified projects. We're looking at single phase customers with listed single phase inverter based systems with power ratings greater than 15 kW in the radial feed, and the 3-phase would be greater than 25 kW. Also, any projects that do not, it's the simplified process screens. So whether that be for PV or loading, it has to go through screening. Also, due to size, any non-simplified project that does not require an impact study will also be handled by this group. Maximum size of supplement review is based on the screens. You must be using all NDPU 1599 forms when submitting applications and closeout packages. Reminder, the simplified section of the presentation can be reviewed for concerns and questions that would have the same impact on residential systems that would fall under this expedited process. Next slide, please. So the interconnection process steps for the larger systems that come in for, some commercial work, we do request that you do submit a pre-app, especially if it's 250 kW or greater. For the application review, determine it is expedited, and then it would go through engineering review and therefore a supplemental review, and we would have to go over potential designs and what is required for construction. We would then deliver the ISA, and that would, you have authority to construct the system. Once this has been paid, we will not begin construction until there is a payment. We will begin our construction in the field. If there is a witness test, but typically we do not, we use the commissioning memo in lieu for these size projects. And then we go through the completion document review, and then we order the meter to be set in the field. And the timelines would run parallel to how they are in simplified as far as dates. Once connected, we get that report back from metering. We then issue a TI or PTO. Next slide, please. So the path of an expedited project. Can you go back one? Thanks, Tim. So we have to, for eligible facilities, we do require, just like in Simplified, the listed inverter, the acknowledgement or receipt of application that comes in within 3 days. It's usually the day. We do review the application. That's a 10 business day turnaround. We are working inside of that. And we have 25 business days to complete the screening of the project. If it's determined it requires supplemental review, you would proceed with a supplemental review fee and or an agreement. And then that's a 20 business day process with our local designers in the field. Once we get that back, we would then have the 10 business days to submit an ISA to the customer. And the total life cycle of this project would be 45 on these expedited projects. It's simple plus. If they do not have a supplemental review, if they do have a supplemental review, it's 65 business days. Construction schedules will vary due to location and scope of job. The WIT notice and witness test within 10 days of receiving the COC or by mutual agreement. But again, typically these jobs we will handle with the commission. Next slide, please. Common errors that we see on our side, again, similar to Simplified. The legal information form needs to be filled out completely, and we do want to use version 2.2. It has been in use for a couple of years, and we're still using that, so we want to see a copy of that. We require that the one-line diagram has a mass electrical professional PE stamp and electrical on the one line. And as referenced before, the construction notes we want to have listed regarding the ESP. If there is a battery in the project, we want to ensure that everything agrees. So ensure the application reflects the equipment. The portal has been updated to show to reflect the equipment, and the one line also has all the information with the equipment. And we also definitely want to see the ACKW on that. Make sure that storage and charging and discharging capability is also on the one line. It should reflect that as any curtailment or limited export that should be listed on there, as well as we have a separate form for you to upload a curtailment letter in the application package. If you are adding to or terminating a system that is on the premise at this point, that should be noted on the one line as well. When the status is conditional approval to limit pending customer decision, do not hit the finalized submission until you uploaded your signed ISA. Slide. Common errors that we see in completion documents for projects that are 60 kW and less. The commissioning memo is required, and we need to have the following things listed on this. So we need to show that the 2-second shutdown when disconnect is open test, the 5 minutes before restart when disconnect is closed test. We want to confirm that the system matches the as-built, include the date of final approved as-built diagram on your commissioning memo, and list the frequency tables and the trip time settings on that. So we do have a standard form for commissioning memos, and that's the easiest way to just have everything contained. Next slide. Also, the as-built must be PE stamped and signed and dated by the person who performed the commissioning test, and the signature date should match the date of the test. Pictures, the meter picture has to reflect the plaque at eye level, so we can see if there's a disconnect located a little ways away from the meter, and also to indicate that there are two power sources. We need to see the placard, and we need to be able to verify the meter number from that photo. If the AC utility disconnect is not grouped with the or adjacent to the utility meter, the permanent plaque again should be visible at eye level, preferably right near the meter, and identifies the location of the AC utility disconnect. The inspection, please have the electrician call in to clear all work inspections, and that also includes prior work that may have existed prior to this project. So you when they call in, just verify there's no open permits with the city. Because we cannot go and exchange a meter if there are any open permits, and inspections have to be cleared with us. Next slide. Lastly, for larger projects, we do require evidence of insurance on jobs greater than 60 kW. If the facility, the exception is if it's 26 to 100 kW, but not class 1 net metering eligible, it does not require insurance. That is listed in the tariff. If you have a qualifying facility for these larger jobs, or if you're doing the QF, we do require a Schedule A, a W-9, an ACH, so those will help with our payments, as well as a supplier enrollment form. And we do have to complete the asset registration again for jobs that are greater than 60 kW. Metering reminder, again, just like was covered by JJ and Fitz, no equipment adapters between the meter and the socket, or should be, or in the meter socket. Meter sockets are not allowed to be used as junction boxes. Make sure your test meter is a generation meter socket, and there must be a clear path to your meter location, and we have to be able to access it. So in the wintertime, if this does need to be shoveled, it needs to be shoveled prior to an exchange. We cannot, go through a foot of snow to install meters safely. For QF, please do get in some forgotten sometimes where that Schedule A is not included. We do require the schedule. And I think at that point, we will go over to Sarah to do a simple screen.
Thanks, Mike. Okay, so let's get started with simple screenings on the next slide. So after app reviews, the case is going to move to screening. Screenings are needed to ensure the safety and reliability of our distribution system, and also ensure that we're abiding by all DPU mandated tariff requirements. A simple screening will include an infrastructure check, which is going to essentially be the review of the transformer conditions and loading, as well as the review of the secondary crit configuration to ensure there won't be any overvoltage issues or any nuisance tripping resulting from the interconnection of the case. Next slide, please. This is just a general kind of flow diagram showing potential paths once your case is in simple screening. So if all screenings pass, you would remain in the simple path and be given conditional approval. If a screening fails and there is an option to reduce the system size to remain simplified, you will be given that option, and all forms will be reopened so that way you can resubmit for that adjusted system and decrease system size. If you chose to maintain the proposed system size, your case would be transitioned to the simple plus or expedited path. That's going to require additional documentation. And then we'll get into what happens in screening at that step a little bit later. So next slide, please. This is just some general guidance for the ESB 756 and ESB 750. So again, you mentioned this a little bit earlier, but any system that is 25 kWAC or over is going to require its own dedicated transformer. All MA Smart systems will require generation, and in some instances, storage, charge, and discharge would need to be captured ahead of any loads. And as a reminder, all final metering locations would need to be determined by our metering department. And work should not begin for the proposed system until the metering department has approved the final disconnect and meter locations on site with the electrician. Next slide, please. So now we're going to get into simple plus screenings and supplemental reviews. So in Simple Plus, a case would go into this track for a screening review if system modifications are required or supplemental review is required. So during the Simple Plus review, we perform additional screenings and additional documentation reviews to determine the most feasible and least cost to serve option to interconnect the system. So that's going to include documentation reviews. We're going to review the system configuration. We're going to look at the distribution system, so an additional infrastructure review. We'll also determine any proposed system modifications and provide an estimated cost of that work. Next slide, please. This, again, is kind of just a flow chart of what it will look like when your case is in a Simple Plus or expedited screening. Again, if a screening fails, you will be given the option to downsize by reducing or curtailing. If you choose to do that, you will have to, again, resubmit all your documentation. That will be re-reviewed, and then if all is well, you'll be given conditional approval. When you're given that option to downsize, you will be provided with an estimated cost of system mods, which would obviously need to be paid. Once that is paid, it would go to conditional approval. If we cannot determine the cost of system modifications, that is when it would go into the supplemental review path. So some potential system modifications could include a service drop, upgrade, reconfiguration of the secondary crib, whether that be overhead or underground, a transformer replacement, a transformer install, pole replacements, and potentially primary line extensions, which is one scope of work that could require a supplemental review. Next slide, please. So for supplemental reviews, we need to do these when we cannot determine the cost of work ourselves or the scope of work is particularly complex. So supplemental review is just an additional engineering study. The screenings are finalized and we provide project notes with the proposed scope of work, and that is then provided to our field engineering team to review and determine required system modifications, and they then would provide the cost estimate of that work. Next slide, please. So there are some situations outside of just not being able to provide a cost estimate in screening that might necessitate a supplemental review. So that's going to include any review of challenging or complex infrastructure, any review of underground areas or areas that otherwise would require an on-site visit by our field engineering team, and any projects that require complex system modifications with costly estimates. Of note would include if there's a customer that's fed from backyard infrastructure, since those do provide additional challenges, mainly due to the complexity of the infrastructure and construction requirements. So if a screening fails and the customer is fed from backyard infrastructure, this is mainly prevalent in Worcester. The scope of work may include the need for easements signed by the landowner, which would assist in reconfiguring the secondary cribs and likely the addition of infrastructure in order to support the backyard crib. It's important to note that not every property is suitable for that scope of work. So all cases fed from Worcester backyard infrastructure will be reviewed on a case-by-case basis with the screening team and distribution design teams to determine the best path forward. Next slide, please. Okay, so once the Simple Plus screening is finalized, the project will be either issued conditional approval or progress to supplemental review. If conditionally approved, your case owner will send out an ISA within 10 business days that will list the system modifications and the estimated cost. If the case is progressed to supplemental review, the case owner will reach out and inform you of the additional engineering review. And the supplemental review fee will need to be paid prior to the commencement of the supplemental review. So that's it for screening, and now I'm gonna hand it off to JJ for derating and curtailment.
Hello, everybody again. So I'm going to briefly cover derating curtailment. Typically when we see it, why you want to do it. So the number one reason is avoidance of any group studies. Any projects over 25 kWAC are subject to being held behind group studies, which you don't want any part of, trust me. So that is when you can then derate a project, which is changing the total system size of that project to be 25 kWAC and less. And then further than that, you can then curtail after derating a project to limit your total export, to prevent any kind of system modifications of anything like that. So derating is the act of reducing or limiting the nameplate of a piece of equipment to operate at a level below its intended rating. Again, it's the system size. That does not make you eligible for net metering. And if you want to read more about it, it's in the ESB section 7.0. Next slide, please. And then curtailment, which is the act of reducing or restricting something, is something that's typically done at a hub or through the PCS of a piece of equipment to limit export. And a quick example could be where you have multiple ESSs, multiple batteries in a system that add to the aggregate AC of a potential export, plus whatever you have for a generator. You might need that entire system size to offset your load, whether it's an electric vehicle, a hot tub, whatever. So you would need like the full 15, 20, 25 kWAC. But you don't necessarily need to export the whole thing. Plus, after whatever you dissipate via loads, you would never export more than that anyway. And it's an easy way to ensure that you can stay in the simplified process, avoid group studies, and avoid costly system mods. Next slide, please. As part of derating or curtailment, we're going to need a documentation from a manufacturer that goes over how they limit their equipment, whether it's through the firmware, through the software, through whatever PCS power control system means, whether it's a smart hub, how they do it, whether it's CTs, at the line side of the hub, or however it is that they're going to limit it, with the specific set points and things that they have there for that piece of equipment. But one line needs to reflect that all of the above information as well. Got to have everything very clearly labeled. Make sure that you have any equipment listed, ratings listed, and the method. The assets in the portal need to match what's submitted on all the documents for the proposed system. And during the closeout process, we're going to require a letter of attestation confirming the derated or curtailed system size from the installer. So the installer confirms that, they know what they set the inverter to or the battery to limit the export, and are ensuring that they're not going to see the rating. And that helps us maintain a safe and reliable distribution system with shared equipment like transformers and secondaries. Next slide, please. When submitting for derating or curtailment, the way you do that is through a limiting protectant function in our portal. And Marissa, who I'm going to pass this off to shortly, created like a how-to on the next two slides of how to add that site limiting element So Ted, if you go through the next two slides rather quickly, it's just a quick step-by-step on how to insert that asset to limit the system and ensure that you have the right output in the portal. And with that, I will pass this off to Mrs. LeMay.
Good morning. My name is Marissa LeMay, aka Marissa Soretti. I'm going to hop right into some portal assistance and guidance. Next slide. So just some application portal do's and don'ts, just making sure that when you're filling out your application roles that you are not editing the developer application role once it's pre-populated, and do not edit the application owner role as well. It does automatically populate from the email address that you're using to enter the application. Always enter an inverter, which is an AC power producing asset. If you don't enter this asset, it's going to give you an error message letting you know that that must be entered prior to submitting your case into the queue. As stated before, always indicate if there is an existing system at triage when it asks the question existing system with a drop down of yes or no. As also said on previous slides, just making sure that all of your line diagrams contain the note about ESP, and then making sure for any payments that you're making, it is going to make the process smoother to make payments electronically. So I did include a helpful link here. If you have any issues with registration, making a payment, anything like that, linking a bank account, feel free to reference this page. If not, feel free to reach out to me directly. Next slide, please. So also just make sure when it comes to entering your incentive that you are selecting the correct incentive. So for all cases, 25 kW single phase and below, you are able to participate in net metering. For all cases that are over 25 kW single phase, you will select qualifying facility. Once the case is submitted, the QF incentive can be changed to net metering if you receive CADMIS approval and supply the approval document on the case. And then like we stated previously, you want to make sure you fill out a Schedule Z form for net metering cases. And then for a qualifying facility, you want to make sure you're filling out a Schedule A or a P-rate form. Next slide, please. So a friendly reminder about when you're filling out your application at triage, you just want to make sure that the address that you are providing matches what is listed on the National Grid bill. This includes any apartment or unit numbers. If this address does not match what is listed on the bill, it can cause a delay in your project being progressed. So like we stated before, we just want to make sure all documents match and everything is uniform. Next slide, please. And then when submitting an application, please have your 10-digit billing account number handy. This is one of the first fields that needs to be filled out. So as we've stated, the billing account number and the meter number are going to be located on the customer's utility bill. The customer has issues locating these numbers. Just let them know they can contact customer service. Next slide, please. And for the required application details section, ensure that you're selecting the correct type of interconnection. If your case includes a battery or any type of storage, making sure that you select new application for generation and storage. If you do not select this, the appropriate forms will not populate, such as the ESS questionnaire, and it will cause a delay in your project. And then please make sure you only select add storage to existing generation if you already have an existing net meter installed. Next slide, please. For the total nameplate rating KWAC field, make sure you are entering the correct system size based on the technical specification sheets of your inverters and batteries. If you enter the incorrect system size at this stage, it's going to push your project potentially into the incorrect tariff track or populate forms that are unnecessary to your case. This will cause a delay as well if your system size is entered erroneously. Next slide, please. And just making sure, a gentle reminder about Mass Smart. This is going to be the section where you will select Mass Smart. So just make sure that if you are not applying for Mass Smart, you don't pick it on accident, because it will populate from required forms that are going to be appropriate for Mass Smart, and it will also add up an incorrect application fee as well. Slide. And then for application roles, just making sure you're filling out all the required fields. It's very important that you list the appropriate emails and phone numbers, as we send out a number of automated emails throughout the case as we begin our review process. And then I also included a helpful link about application roles and how to fill them out correctly. Next slide, please. And then going off of what JJ had discussed in his slides, there are a number of scenarios where it may be necessary to curtail or limit the export on a given inverter. In order for National Grid to provide authority to interconnect, we require the following information: curtailment limited export letter on a company letterhead, uploaded at either application draft or screening review. A protective function asset must also be listed. Please review the following knowledge page and review the tutorial labeled how to propose a site limiting element protective function. And National Grid is actively working on updating the company's product catalog to reflect more protective function assets as well. Next slide. And over the next two slides, I did include some common portal error messages that you might receive during the lifeline of your projects. So please review the screenshots to verify the next best steps. So it's my understanding that some developers or contractors might receive the error message zip code is needed on case service address to proceed for payment. So this is because you're trying to submit your project and the account number is not valid. It's finalized. The account number doesn't exist, because when that doesn't go through in our system, the zip code doesn't populate, and the portal at that point will not let you make payment unless your billing account number is active. And then there's another error message you may receive as well when trying to enter your assets. It will say tariff capacity exceeded. This happens for mostly mass simple cases, and it gives you an error message that you are trying to enter equipment that exceeds the capacity for mass simple, which is 15 kW single phase or 25 kW three phase. And then the last error message on this page is you will receive this error message when trying to submit your project, which indicates you have not added a generation asset. It's required for all submitted projects unless you are adding storage to existing generation. So it will say, please use the prep icon to add generation equipment. Next slide, please. And then just the next two error messages are mostly about e-sign or offline sign. So just want to make sure that you're using that prep icon. It's a little wrench, and it's going to say e-sign or offline sign. So if you're going to e-sign a form, application, or Schedule Z, make sure you press e-sign. If you're uploading the document with a signature on it, make sure you're pressing offline sign. And then also, we do have a brand new error message that we've been experiencing over the last 2 weeks. We do anticipate this to be resolved by the end of this business week. But if you do see this error message, please feel free to tag me directly or send me an email separately as well. And then just some helpful guides and links I also included on this page. And like I stated on the last slide, if you have any issues, questions, concerns, feedback, feel free to email me individually or tag me on a case. And I'll hand this off to Mario.
Thank you, Marissa. Good morning, everyone. My name is Mario, and I am on the Post Interconnection team, primarily assisting with residential and small commercial solar account inquiries. We can start off with some net metering, billing requirements, and eligibility. Renewable energy generating systems that are 25 kilowatt AC or less are eligible for net metering without a net metering cap allocation, also known as nameplate cap exempt. A facility with a nameplate greater than 25 kilowatt AC serving on-site load may qualify as a cap exempt facility serving on-site load, also known as CEFSOLs. These would need to have an executed ISA with a distribution company, dated on or after January 1st, 2021. They need to be an eligible renewable energy generating facility. They need to be serving on-site load, and they cannot be net metered facility for municipal or other governmental entities. All other systems require a net metering cap allocation from MASACA. Without a net metering cap allocation, the account will default to a qualifying facility. We go over some basic differences between net metering, market net metering, and qualifying facilities from an incentive and allocation standpoint. For net metering, the credits are calculated using four components, which are distribution, transmission, transition, and fixed basic service rates. Surplus generated credits can be transferred to other accounts in the same load zone using a Schedule Z. Moving on to market net metering, it's the same four factors, but it only applies to 60% of excess kilowatt hours that are surplus generated. Credits can be transferred to other accounts in the same load zone using a Schedule Z. DevSols also additionally can transfer across load zones for distribution companies within Massachusetts. For qualifying facilities, the credits are based off of ISO New England's clearance prices, and the credits are not transferable. Go to the next slide, please. Now we'll cover some basics of reclassification to standard net metering. We'll start off with the basic eligibility criteria. The first is the project size, which needs to be less than or equal to 25 kilowatt AC. Second is compliance with the single parcel rule. For that, you'll just refer to Mass DPU's 23140C and the single parcel rule 2320A and 2320B. We'll cover a little bit more of that in the next few slides. The third is the storage or battery. The project has a storage or battery component. It does need to be in compliance with the DPU permissible configurations, which we will cover right in the next slide. So accounts that were receiving market net metering credits have already been reclassified to standard net metering. This was automatic. Nothing was required from the customer. Qualifying facilities receiving credits at ISO New England clearance prices can submit a request for qualifying facilities receiving credits at ISO New England clearance prices can submit a request for reclassification using the Contact Us form. A response will be emailed to the customer after the eligibility checks are completed. Projects with an interconnected application and enrolled in Mass Smart with a size not greater than 25 kilowatt AC. If the account is eligible in all other aspects and requires a new final statement of qualification from Clear Result, National Grid will facilitate this with no additional documentation required from the customer. For projects with battery energy storage systems, as you can take a look at the left, you'll see the matrix there from the net metering guide. You'll see there's only one configuration that will cause an account to not be eligible. That is if the battery is programmed to charge from the grid and capable of exporting to the grid. Next slide, please. So for the single parcel rule, it's important to use the definitions as per the DPU, which is that this is the energy generating equipment associated with a single parcel of land interconnected with the EDC at a single point behind a single meter. It's important to note that the DPU relies on the Registry of Deeds to determine the parcel boundaries and not any GIS documentation. There are statutory exceptions that are now managed by MassACA. These exceptions provide specific instances in which the host customers can submit a self-certification form to certify the eligibility for an exception to enable multiple facilities on a single parcel to net meter. The rooftop cap exempt blanket exception has been discontinued as per the department's order in 2320. The multiple technologies blanket exception is still active and participants can still apply for that through the link in this presentation. The customer is responsible to provide National Grid with final approval received from MassACA using the Contact Us form. Go to the next slide, please. So this is just showing you a Schedule Z allocation form. Most of you have already used this before and very familiar with how to use it and how to submit it. A Schedule Z is required when initially interconnecting the net metering system. The customer can elect to transfer all, some, or none of the credits to other accounts. Net metering credits can only be transferred within a customer load zone with the exception of DevSols. To update a Schedule Z, you need to just create an inquiry using the Contact Us form. And the last point is we do have a knowledge document on how to complete this form if you ever needed that. Next slide, please. Thank you. This is an example of a simple net metering bill where the panels have over-generated a surplus of 412 kilowatt hours. And you'll see that the net metering credit line item does apply net metering rate times the surplus generation. And this is the rate that we talked on is based on distribution, transition, transmission, and the basic service rates. If you take a look, you'll see that is going to be the net metering credit. We will deduct from that the customer charge, and the credits applied to the bill will be that sum. So in this case, $123.47. If we can move over to the next slide, please. So this bill sample is for a net metered account where the panels have not over-generated. It would appear just like a regular electric bill since there was power drawn from the grid. The billed amount would be on the power drawn from the grid only. Any solar generation or coincident load offset would already be accounted for. So this customer used 374 kilowatt hours from the grid in excess to what the solar panels generated and offset. If we can go to the next slide, please. It is quite important to note what action needs to be taken when there are any physical changes needed to already interconnected projects. Any customer seeking to make a change to a connected project should submit an inquiry via the Contact Us form. The inquiry will be reviewed and routed to the account manager or team who will guide you on the requirements to implement this change. Only non-significant changes will be managed this way. Significant changes will require a new application. An example of a non-significant change would be changing the inverter, whether it's faulty or at the end of its warranty period or life cycle. An example of a significant change would be adding batteries to a connected project. If there's any uncertainty on the significance of the change, please just raise an inquiry to receive the correct guidance. Also, another important note is that depending on the age of the project and the nature of the ask, there might be extra incurred costs and associated timelines. So in summary, please do not make any changes to connected projects without informing National Grid. Alterations that invalidate the facility's SIA may result in disconnection until all approvals and compliance are achieved. With this, I will pass this back to George. Thank you for your time.
All right, folks. That was a lot to digest, right? A lot of information in that time. We do have some pre-submitted questions. We'll go into the Q&A section for those of you that want to join. I know that we're only 1 minute left, but we can certainly, National Grid can certainly stay on a little bit longer if you'd like. Again, a copy of this presentation and the recording will be made available on our website for review or reference, I guess, right? So let's get into a couple of the Q&As that had come through. Someone had asked actually about the simplified interconnection timeframe, and I just wanted to make clear a statement that I had made. So an application